Hello, friends, and welcome. I am Leah Carey. I am a schmex and relationship coach. Have to be very careful with that word in order to not be either kicked off the platform or demonetized, which actually I'm not monetizing yet, but still want to be careful. Um, and I am here to start doing hopefully a lot more pop culture commentary. And I wanted to start with last night's Love Island reunion because it was a lot. Um, I was an avid watcher of the show rather throughout the season, and actually I was quoted yesterday a couple of times in the publication The Sun talking about everything that had happened on the island. And then last night for the reunion, I was really excited to see what had happened. And what I want to talk about specifically today is the conflict between Nicole and Kendall. So you do not need to have watched the show in order to watch this video and get something out of it. Let me just give you a little bit of background. On the island, Nicole and Kendall were a pretty strong couple. They had a few little ups and downs, but basically they were pretty solid. And then at the end of the season, there was this big deal made about each of them saying, I love you to the other. And, by all accounts, it looked like they should leave the island and be blissfully happy together forevermore, which in itself we know is a bit of a long shot. But anyway, it looked like they were on their way to having a good, solid relationship, at least for a little while outside the villa. And then, almost immediately after leaving the island, an ex of Kendall's dropped a schmex tape of the two of them. And I have to be honest, I have not watched it. I have not really followed this piece of the story because, honestly, it's a little too sordid. Not that it's bad, but I didn't want to read all of the people, having the vapors over a tape. It's all a bit puritanical for my tastes. But anyway, so this tape comes out right after they get out of the villa, and not a lot is said, if much of anything was said by Nicole or Kendall. And so this is the first time, it's 3-4 weeks later, this is the first time that we're hearing them talk about what has happened. And so with that background, I'm going to switch us over to here. And what I want to talk specifically about are two things: how how he handles the apology, and second is how our nervous system can get so activated that we don't necessarily always have great control over our in the moment responses. So let's get started. Kendall is being a little bit vague because he also probably doesn't want to talk too much about schmex tapes. So here we go.
I should have told Nicole like the full truth when it happened, and I didn't.
So I just want to say something, because obviously the video is not okay. Like, nobody deserves that. Everybody in this room can agree. However, I think if you say you love somebody in the moment, when you're telling me about something, you need to be honest. Instead of saying it's from years ago to someone you trusted, an ex-girlfriend, and then I find out 2 later from Janae that it was in the hotel room before you go on the show to someone on a dating app is crazy.
Right.
Okay, so let's just pause there for a moment. What we're learning is that presumably Nicole and Kendall, and I think he'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, are in a hotel room. They are spending time together. She leaves the room to, I don't know, get a soda, go to the bathroom, whatever. And he finds out about what's going on. He sees it on his phone. He gets a ton of notifications about what's going on. And he realizes that there's a real problem. And when Nicole walks back in the room and is like, hey, what's going on? He says, oh, this Schmeck's tape came out, but it was from a girlfriend a long time ago who's now trying to capitalize on this, fame that I now have. When actually, in truth, what Nicole finds out a couple of days later from Janae, another cast member, is that this was actually a recently recorded Schmeck's tape, and that it was with somebody who Kendall, I guess, met on like Tinder or something right before they went into the island. Understandably, she feels betrayed. She feels lied to because she has been lied to. Okay, so let's keep going.
I know I 100% should have been honest with Nicole in that moment, but I honestly wasn't ready to literally completely admit like what the lie was on me. Like, I'm not gonna make excuses. Obviously, it's a situation I've been put in, but the last thing I wanted to do was lie to you. And
so let's look. Sorry, I have lots of little bugs in this room. Let's look at the apology that Kendall is offering. So often apologies don't land because the person who's giving them is like, yeah, I'm sorry. And you're like, you're sorry for what? And they're like, I'm sorry for whatever you're upset about, which is absolutely not a satisfying apology, because it means that they don't actually have any idea why you're upset, and there's really no chance that they're going to be able to adjust their actions into the future because they don't know what happened this time. Instead, what you want is to hear somebody say, I'm sorry. I really messed up. Here's what happened. I understand what happened. And here's what I'm going to do. Either here's what I should have done then, or here's what I'm going to do in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again. So far, we've heard Kendall say, I'm sorry, like still very important to use those words. And he's given a clear accounting, and he will go on to continue to give a clear accounting of what he did wrong and why he understands that it's wrong. So far, we've got 2 of the 4 things we need for a really strong apology.
I'm sorry that I fell victim to that in that moment. Like, literally, it was a split second. I get my phone back, and it's just ding, 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 with all these different things. And you walk in, I have no idea what to tell you.
So you make up a lie?
Yes, I did. I admit, I'm sorry, I did. But in that moment, I physically couldn't tell you. My mom.
Okay, so I want to pause here, and we're actually going to look at the nervous system response and then go back to the apology, just because of how this conversation was structured. When Kendall says, I physically couldn't tell you, I understand that may sound like a cop-out. That may sound like, what does that mean you couldn't physically tell me? But the truth is that every one of us has a nervous system response, or we all have a nervous system that can get activated in the moment. What happens when we get activated is that fight or flight symptoms that you've, I'm sure, heard about. Fight, flight, freeze. And in my line of work, we include fuck. Sometimes people will just lay down and be like, yes, do whatever you need to do so that it's done and then I can leave. Or I'm even going to encourage you to do what you want to do so that we can get this over and I can leave. So Kendall, his nervous system gets activated. He reads these messages. He sees that there is some shiz going down in his world. And his adrenaline starts pumping and his body gets flooded with cortisol, which is the stress hormone that creates the fight or flight or freeze response. So he goes straight into intense activation. And when we're in that state, I encourage you to remember a time when you have been in that state where you could not process, you couldn't think, you couldn't anything because you were so upset. Maybe you were having a panic attack or an anxiety attack. Maybe you were just so overwhelmed you couldn't process information. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody, but everybody does have some version of this where you get so activated that it becomes impossible to process. For me, one of the things that happens is if I get like an email or something that I, in that quick moment that my brain interprets as an attack, my system will go into full flush. I will get really red. I'll get really hot. I won't be able to breathe and I won't be able to think. Because the only thing that's going on in my head is, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Again, totally different for everybody. But in that state of intense activation, you can't think. And so this whole conversation now pivots on the fact that Kendall, in that moment, was so activated that he could not process appropriately. And something came out of his mouth that probably was, again, his nervous system just replying in the way that would be like, how do I cause the least amount of damage in this moment because I can't handle anything more. I want to be super clear. I'm not making excuses for him telling a lie, but we do need to understand that there's a reason that it happens, because this happens in your life too. I promise this has happened in your life too. Okay, so he says, I physically couldn't tell you. And that's going to be hard for anybody outside of his brain to understand, because all they see is, wait, what are you saying? What is going on? They can't see what's inside his brain. They can only see like what's going on the outside of him. They have no idea that he's this activated. So it makes no sense that he would lie unless he was being malicious and hurtful.
I was trying to process what my life was.
Like, I just don't get how you can't be honest with me in that moment.
So, I should keep.
If you love me as much as you say
Nicole,
you do.
I wish it. I wish it was as simple as me being honest.
Okay, sorry.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so when Nicole says, I don't understand why you couldn't just be honest with me, it's not that she's being willfully obtuse about his state of mind. She is inside her own state of mind. She is also activated because something has happened to this man that she loves, because her reputation is caught up in it. And I'm willing to bet that Nicole has a history of being lied to or of being betrayed in some way, because her level of activation in this conversation suggests to me that this is not a one-time thing. This is something that her body and her nervous system is really familiar with. And so she doesn't go through degrees of upset. She goes from 0 to 100 like that. So she gets super activated and she can't hear anything. Kendall is trying so hard to explain, but she can't hear it because her brain is now in this space of not being able to process anything. Again, not making excuses for anybody, just looking at how this scene plays out to understand there's a reason that these two people cannot communicate, at least in this moment. Let's keep going.
No,
It's a hard moment, but when you love someone, you have to be honest.
I get it. The heat of the moment, it's such an embarrassing thing. It's either 50-50. You're going to tell the truth, just like you can just straight up do it, or you're so embarrassed, you don't want the person you care the most to hate you.
So if this was you and Kenny
So I just want to pause for a second. Janae, one of the other Islanders, is saying, you either decide to tell the truth or not, which I'm going to say is maybe not so much of a decision based on what we've already been saying. It's just like an automatic response. But she says one of the reasons that she finds it understandable is because Kendall didn't want to hurt the person he loved the most in that moment because she was his support person and he didn't want to upset her. He didn't want to make her hate him too. And I actually think that's a really astute point that none of this probably was conscious. This is all happening at a moment to moment subconscious level, but that wait, I'm getting all the names confused because I see Kenny on the screen and it's Kendall. But that Kendall was also in some part of his lizard brain trying to preserve the relationship with the one person who he thought would support him no matter what, as long as she didn't know exactly what was going on. So Janae has made an astute point here. Now, Nicole is about to ask, what if the situation was reversed? What if Kenny had lied to you?
Kenny did that, lied to your face,
If
and I
Kenny
show you the
lied,
video 2 days later, and you see it completely
Yes, but
different.
if Kenny
How would
lied
you
and
feel?
told me straight up, hey, in the moment I cared about you so much, I was so embarrassed, I just didn't want you to hate me, so I lied, I would be understanding.
So
Okay, so this is another thing that is so incredibly common. That when we're sitting here in a non-activated calm space, which Janae appears to be, it's really easy to make assumptions about how we would act in some other situation as if we would not be activated in that situation. She says, yeah, if Kenny told me he lied, I would understand that he was, that he was embarrassed and I would forgive him and I wouldn't be upset. The chances that Janae would be that calm and non-activated in the moment that something like that is happening are actually pretty small. But we assume we know our intentions. Something that is painful but true is that we judge other people on their actions. We judge them by what we see them do in the world. But we want everyone to judge us on our intentions. So we don't want them to judge us on what they see us doing in the world. We want them to judge us based on what we're thinking and how we're feeling. And so in this case, Janae is saying, well, my intentions would be to love him and forgive him. But the truth is that in that moment, she might not have access to those intentions for all of the reasons we've already described, that her nervous system would be activated. And in that space, you can't think clearly. So I appreciate that Janae is making this point and that she's, standing up for her friend in this way. But it's not a real apples to apples comparison because she is speaking from a non-activated place and assuming that if it happened, she would also be responding from a non-activated place. And that's just not how this works.
okay to lie to the person who's closest to you. It's okay to lie to women, though, to their face.
Because all I want to do is mend the lie that I said to you to Stark that went into this whole shit show last couple of weeks. I should have went on social media and said, hey, like everyone, like Nicole, like she needs time to compress. I lied to her to start out. There's literally nothing on her. You're right. I should have went out there and just said that.
So, Nicole, speaking about it.
Okay. So at the beginning, I was talking about the 4 pieces of a really effective apology. We had already heard Kendall say, I'm sorry, and explain what it was that he why he understood he was apologizing. He has talked about why it happened. Maybe not the greatest explanation in the world, but, let's give him the benefit of the doubt that this is a high stress situation. He's talked about how he couldn't access his thoughts or feelings because he was these are my words, obviously, he was so activated. And now what we hear him saying is, here's what it should have looked like. here's what I should have done. Presumably, we would like to be able to extrapolate that into, here's what I would do if this ever happened again in the future. This is the piece of the apology that is missed so frequently, and this is what makes an effective apology, because it gives you a sense of, I feel like I can rebuild trust with this person because they not only understood what happened, they understand what happened, but they also want to do something different, and they've already sort of thought about it and laid out a plan for what they'll do differently. When people talk about taking accountability, it's a huge catchphrase now. Everybody, you should just take accountability. What that means is not just saying, I'm sorry, I was bad. It means, here's how I hurt you. Here's why I understand that's a problem. And here's what I'm going to do in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again. That is a real accountability taking. That's not really a phrase. That is somebody really taking accountability and rebuilding trust in a way that hopefully you can begin to believe them again. Okay, so now we've gone through the accountability. We've looked at the nervous system activation. I just want to show you like a couple seconds more of clip. And what I really want you to focus on, and I'm even going to turn my screen off. I really want you to focus on what happens on Nicole's face.
To protect you.
I've been something happened.
Whoops. Okay. So there we go. How do I get me back? Here we go. Okay. So what we see here is Nicole's chin trembling. This is something that I think those of us who were brought up as little girls tend to how do I say this? Because we have a lot easier access to our emotions than people who are brought up as little boys who are taught to suppress their emotions entirely. We have access to our emotions, but we also don't want to be perceived as over emotional. And so things like this happen, the trembling of the chin when you're kind of on the verge of tears, but also trying to hold them back. And there's a lot of people who will like bite down, will tense up their jaw so that their chin doesn't quiver like this. But this is actually a really good sign, because when your chin quivers like this, or when you're trembling, when you're in a state of high activation and your body starts shaking, again, for everybody, this might look a little bit different. That is your nervous system doing its job to release the stress. This is actually, now I do want to say I am in no way an expert on this. But if you listen to people who talk about the nervous system in a professional way, you'll hear them talk about how after, let's say there's a fox and a bunny, if the fox comes after the bunny and the bunny escapes, after the bunny knows that it's safe, it will go through a process of trembling and shaking, which is the bunny's nervous system's way of releasing all of the cortisol and getting it back into a more neutral state, letting go of that activation. Human bodies work the same way, but we have been trained to not allow ourselves to do those things. There are a lot of reasons for that. And so we hold ourselves really tight and we try so hard to not ever let anybody know that they've gotten to us. The fact that Nicole's chin is trembling is, first of all, a sign that she is in high activation. It's also a sign that she has some access to allowing her nervous system to play out some of the or to let go of some of the activation in the moment. Clearly not all of it, not by a long shot. But this trembling is actually a really good thing when you see it or when it's happening to you. I would encourage you to not try to suppress that, at least the best you can. So, okay, that was it, I think. Thank you so much for being with me today. Here's the deal. I have decided that I really want to do these pop culture breakdowns, and if I have to edit them, it just will never happen. This is what I learned from having a podcast. If I have to edit, it's not going to happen. So instead, I'm going to go live. Oh, let me make myself full screen here. Nope, wrong one. There we go. So I'm going to go live instead so that whatever happens is what happens, and I'm just not going to edit it. So I hope that you will enjoy this sort of more stream of consciousness and also less polishedness of these videos. Once I get onto a regular schedule, I'll let you know in advance when the lives are going to happen so that you can join me in progress. I would love to have you here, discussing, commenting as we're going so that it can really be a conversation. But for the moment, please like this video. It really does make a difference. Comment to let me know if you like this and any thoughts that you have about what I've said. And also, of course, subscribe to the channel. And one more thing, I should have said this at the beginning. What we're seeing is, in every case on reality TV, are edited portrayals of real people. We cannot assume that anything we see on TV is an actual reflection of who they are as a human. So everything I've talked about today, I'm responding to what we're seeing on the screen, not necessarily to the actual people, because we don't really know anything about the actual people except the edited version of them we see on the screen. So think of them more as characters than as real people. And please, please, they've gotten so much hate. Please, if you're going to interact with them, do so in a positive way. All right, that is it for today. I am Leah Carey, Schmecks and relationship expert. Please like, subscribe, drop a comment, and I'll see you next time.